Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Hey, welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me one quick favor and leave us that 5-star rating and review. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you have any questions, you have any feedback, you have any guests that you want us to bring on, make sure you leave us that comment or review so we can learn more about what you want to learn so we can bring that to the show. Now, today we've got a good episode for you. We're going to talk to my friend, Taylor Loht. Taylor is on a mission to teach busy professionals how they can invest in real estate without dealing with tenants, toilets, and termites. He highlights and distills the knowledge, experience, and lessons of expert real estate investors through his podcast, his YouTube channel, and his email newsletter called Passive Wealth Strategies for Busy Professionals. Let's welcome to the show, Taylor Loht.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Hi to everybody out there. Looking forward to talking today.
Absolutely. Taylor, listen, it's great to have you on the show. A little bit long time overdue at this point. I went over your bio at a high level. Why don't you take a minute and give us a little bit more context?
Sure, absolutely. So, when you kind of get into real estate investing, you read the book that I think many of us know and love, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it opens your eyes to the possibilities of cash flow, building systems, and having strategies, putting things together that bring you money on a consistent basis. And in light of the investment options that were typically presented by the financial media, like, I don't know, I don't want to name any, but you guys all know them, where, buy a stock, buy this hot stock, and then boom, that stock's down 60% the next week. You really can see how Wall Street is, I hate to say it, I own stocks, right? But Wall Street's a casino, let's be real. And busy professionals, busy people who maybe like their career and don't want to necessarily build themselves another headache, another business, another job, but still want to get into real estate, have many options that they're not aware of, that aren't discussed on the mainstream financial media. I'm a big fan of the FIRE movement. Folks might be aware of it. But many of the folks in the FIRE movement also don't talk about real estate investment strategies for reasons that, we can get into, that has to do with the business model of the FIRE movement. But
what is FIRE?
Sure. Financial independence, retire early, or financially independent, retired early. It's a fairly large movement. Last I checked, for example, if you're familiar with Reddit, the financial independence subreddit had like 850,000 members, and there are just numerous podcasts, blogs, Facebook groups for all different kinds of niches of the FIRE movement. Folks may not realize, especially if you're in real estate, BiggerPockets has a FIRE related podcast. They don't call it FIRE, it's BiggerPockets Money. They tend to have a lot of FIRE movement related guests on the show. Now, granted, they don't call it FIRE, but if you're looking at the things that they talk about, the goals of the listeners, what they're bringing to you, that's really what it's going after, is that FIRE movement subset of folks.
Yeah. And Taylor, so you mentioned just recognizing that the stock market is a bit of a casino from your eyes, and, understanding that larger institutions, they're playing a different game, right? I mean, there's just a whole lot of stuff, whether it be the media, the institutions. It's really a different game where your average investor who is working a full-time job and maybe has a little bit of money to invest in stocks, they may be in a disadvantage, but there are other strategies that they can employ to use their capital to get returns. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Before we do, how did you get into this space? I mean, what were you going through, and what motivated you to start looking more into finances and starting to understand how you could help other people in this space?
Sure. So that gets a bit into, my background, kind of where I came from. I mean, I come from a middle-class family. I went to college for chemical engineering and, got into that field after graduating. And I kind of did what we engineers are good at, right? I did the math I looked at, okay, where do I want to be financially in my 30s, 40s, 50s? And where does my, engineering trajectory put me if I make some reasonable assumptions, looking at what other folks in the field make, typical returns on the stock market, make a reasonable prediction. And I saw that there was a huge mismatch between my goals and where I was headed. Now, there's nothing wrong with, you know, having a good salary and saving and investing prudently, but I wanted to find a way to take it to another level, that next level. And, big goal of mine is, and I don't even talk about it with my parents much, but I mean, one day, my parents are in their 50s now, they're doing great, but one day they're going to be not in their 50s and 70s and 80s. And if we look at the cost of elder care now in 2021, it's absolutely astronomical. And my parents aren't hurting for money, right? But when that time comes, I want money to not even be a concern, right? And that has just always been a big motivation of mine, and there are many other things, kind of along those lines that, to me, as a real estate, an investor in general, and someone who's kind of obsessed with planning and tracking the numbers, I'm an engineer. Time time is our most limited asset, but if we start early and we take those actions, set up systems, it's also on our side if we make a long-term plan and we just keep executing on it. So, as kind of a roundabout way of saying, like I said before, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that took me out of all right, I'm an engineer, I want to make more money, how do I do it? Hey, I'll go get an MBA. And as I was kind of in that final stage of getting ready to go to do an MBA, I took the test, started applying. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, man, I'm going to invest $300,000 to make 20 grand more a year. I don't know if that really is going to work out. So I decided to find another thing and dive into real estate.
Oh, well, listen, I mean, as another fellow real estate investor who also did not go get his MBA for a lot of the same reasons, you're talking to a kindred brother from that standpoint. But I mean, I did the math as well and was like, so let me get this straight. I'm about to go spend 2 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a small amount of money when I could take this same money, invest it in real estate or something else, and basically see a 3x return over what I was going to do with my MBA. And by the way, I could still get fired at any point. So yeah, let's go down this route. So I mean, listen, that's the engineer, the mind, the math. I understand the way you looked at the numbers and analyzed, right? But my understanding is you didn't have any real estate investing experience prior to this, right? So
That's true.
how did you overcome that challenge, right? Because most people hear this and it sounds great. You listen to the podcast, you read the books, you're on these, forums, and it sounds great. It sounds like the easy thing to come in and just start investing in real estate. But it's a challenge to get started for many people. How did you get started and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, something about me that the listeners don't know, and you probably don't realize, and folks out there, is I am very stubborn, at least when I want to be. I'm always open to having my mind changed about things, but when I have my mind set on something, it's going to be really hard to make me change my mind. Right. So when I got to the point that, okay, this is what I want to do, I want to become a real estate investor, I want to and figure that path out and go that direction. All right, well, that's what I'm doing. And I'm not giving up. I'm going to stumble. I'm going to see people come and go. I'm going to see people come and have a faster trajectory than me. And there are all these things that you can take into your mind as, hey, here's a reason I should give up, or here's a reason why, so and so is progressing faster than me. Oh, woe is me. I can take that poorly. No, you have to take all of those things and use them as fuel. Hey, somebody is quote unquote having more success than you faster. What are they doing that you're not doing? And do they deserve it? I mean, shoot, I don't know. A lot of people that I know that have been very successful in real estate quickly, shoot, they've earned it. They've worked really hard at it. So it's not exactly a strategy, but the way I got started was just by not giving up and just continuing to put one foot in front of the other. Okay, what's this next thing that I need to learn? Okay, I need to learn how to underwrite, or I need to learn how to talk to investors, or I need to learn all these things. Okay, well, I'm going to go figure that out. I'm going to talk to somebody, I don't know, like John Kasman. Hey, I needed it. And, for the listeners out there, you did give me some extremely helpful advice in March of 2020, literally like 2 days before all the lockdowns started. We were at a mastermind together, and I had this thing in my mind, like, hey, I need a better lead generation magnet for my website. The one I had was just not working. It wasn't targeted right. It wasn't really marketed right. And this mastermind was over, and I grabbed you, and we were talking a little bit, and reconnecting in person, and you gave me this idea, and I was like, oh man, that's great. I'm gonna go try that. And I went home, finished it, and it was perfect timing in a certain sense because I couldn't go anywhere because coronavirus had hit, and finished it up, and hey, it worked, right? And okay, that's one thing in place, and I learned a meta skill there too of how to better understand, my prospective client, the person that I could theoretically help. So, it's just one example of continuing to put pieces in place and to build on top of that. And, that's what it's all about, right? Is just gradually improving and adding new strategies on top of what you're already doing.
Yeah, that mastermind was a fun event, and you're right. It was, I mean, literally, it's probably no more than a week. I mean, 5 days, I think, before the world kind of, or at least here in America, um, when things really tightened up and, the lockdowns came and all of that kind of stuff, right? So it was my last time going out for
Yeah, and you
a
flew,
long,
right?
long
You flew
time.
to
Yeah,
it.
we flew. Oh, wait, did I? I did. I flew. It's funny. I had to hesitate. 'Cause I remember a long drive. That's because I think I flew into either Philly's airport or New York's airport, and I had to drive. Anyway, it was like an hour-long drive to
Mm.
get to this event for the mastermind. But the thing you said that I think jumps out to me, going back to the first part, was, you know, being stubborn, but being committed. And you started talking about just watching other people maybe moving a little bit faster. And I think that's really an important thing because, especially if you start to get into this community, you start building some relationships, some people, and you watch some people come in very quickly and then they got their first deal. And if any of you are on social media, you've probably have seen people post, their, hey, just close this, 200 unit property or whatever the case may be, right? And you could be looking at it and saying, man, like this person just started and they just acquired this property and I'm still like treading water, not getting much traction. And why is that? And I love the notion of, hey, stick with it and figure out what they're doing. What did they do differently? Is there something you can learn from that? It's not so much that they earn it, but it's more, what are they doing that allowed them to get these results? And if you can learn that, maybe it's something you're not willing to do. Maybe you don't like the deal or you think the deal's a little thin. But maybe they're just looking at more deals. Maybe they're just more aggressive in their underwriting process or something else. But to learn from it is the big takeaway. Learn from those people who you see having success, learn what they're doing, incorporate those tactics, and that's going to help you grow. And go back to the mastermind, and we definitely talked about that. And I think the lead magnet was a very important thing because as we discussed, part of what we want to do is make sure we're helping the people that we believe we can help. And I think a lot of times we focus on just the real estate portion of this, right? And just how do I build relationships to go out and buy real estate. But at the end of this is a real listener. There's a real person who is trying to find solutions for their own life, and you are focused on helping, create these passive strategies for the busy real estate or for that busy professional. And helping to understand what that person is going through or what they need is going to make your job much easier because now you're going to be in a position to actually help that individual. So I want to talk about the platform, right? You've got the podcast, you have the email newsletter, believe you do some other events as well. Why did you decide to create a platform specifically targeting the busy professional?
Well, the most, because that's, what I have the most experience with, right? Just to be flatly open about it, right? I mean, you and I have, friends and co-members of some groups that we're in who say are doctors, and that's their thing. Is we're targeting physician investors, great, because they can relate to that person. Well, I can relate to the person who has a W-2 job that they at least like, and it pays them well. And the only difference is, they don't want to necessarily build another business. They want to grow their wealth more quickly without buying themselves another job. So that's who I can relate to. And it was also a matter of a lot of brainstorming with Trevor McGregor. He was on my team. And, at the time when I had a podcast previously, because my background is actually in sales. I transitioned to sales engineering some number of years ago. And I had another podcast called Seven Figure Sales Podcast. It's no longer out there. Don't bother looking it up. I don't think you could find it. And I had just decided that I had a number of sales thought leaders on there. I learned a lot of things, and, talked to some really great people. But the message got a little stale. I got a little bored with hosting it, because I'd bring on this new sales thought leader and they were saying the same thing that the last three sales thought leaders had said. And, and it just wasn't going after my real goal of talking about investing. So, chose to reposition and talk more about passive wealth generation, because that's my true passion anyway. As soon as I had, two nickels to rub together, got out of college and, could pay my own rent and had some real income coming in, I read, books about, okay, how do I grow this? I didn't start with real estate. I started with, stocks, but that's been my real passion. So that's really what I should be talking about anyway. Right.
I love it, man. I love the transparency too, because when I first met you, you're right. I think you had just launched the Seven Figure Sales podcast, and watching you go and do the pivot to the new podcast platform that you have, and I think that's the interesting thing is that a lot of times people are scared to start, and part of the reason you're scared to start is you're fearful of not being successful. And, Taylor's telling you that, he did a show, he ended up pivoting. Many of our longtime listeners will know that, if you go back to the early episodes of this show, we focused heavily on markets. We talked almost exclusively about where you're investing, what are your cap rates, where's the growth and development taking place, what's happening with the infrastructure and jobs, what metrics do you look for in the market. We went really deep into that, and it started because that's what I was looking to learn, how to find the best places to invest. And as you kind of mentioned, Taylor, what started to happen was I realized a lot of the guests were given the same information. We would hear those same metrics start to get repeated over and over. And it was great because now that I've had enough people say it, I could kind of take it as almost gospel. The challenge was it didn't make for very interesting content if I kind of already knew the answers to the questions before I said it. So we kind of had to find ways to pivot. And I think that's really important. You have to always pivot, rebrand, reinvent yourself. Apple doesn't become Apple if they're not constantly looking to do updates and bring out new products and continue to innovate. And anytime you are creating content, do not be afraid to pivot, rebrand, and reestablish. You can do that. Don't feel like you are boxed into whatever you set out with day one. You can always evolve. You can always, make sure that whatever you're doing is working for you. But find a way to stay consistent, and that's the key is stay consistent, continue to work. And you've been able to do that with this, your new show. It's less about sales, more about those wealth strategies for investors or professionals and really helping them. And my guess is by focusing and shifting to something you are more passionate about and something that you feel you can help people with in your own business, you probably were re-energized based on that. Maybe you can give us a little bit more context to that emotional kind of shift and kind of how you've been able to get re-energized and helping these individuals.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great question. It's interesting because I always, we say new show, right? I've been working on this current show, Passive Wealth Strategies for Busy Professionals, for 2.5 years. I mean, it's been live for 2 years too. So I did a lot of planning and pre-recording and figuring out what I wanted it to be. And, by the time this goes live, I'll be up to 3 episodes a week. Right now I'm doing 2, and I record a lot of these episodes per week, right? And I'm banking many. I still get nervous, right, when I go to talk to somebody for the podcast because, how am I going to make it interesting? How am I going to connect with this person so that, I want my guests to enjoy their time spent with me, and I want them to, hopefully open up and, maybe talk about things, not things that they're not comfortable talking about, but things that they haven't maybe discussed on other interviews. And I ask them about the worst investment they ever made. Well, I want them to be open and honest. I want to make sure that, they understand that I and the audience know that the best investors all have lost money on something, right? It's not a bad thing in that case, right? So, I mean, that's just one example. It's just something that I love to talk about and think about and, constantly work on refining. And, like I said, it's been my passion since I had that money to do something with. So, it's always fun to learn. And, my investment strategy is syndication, right?
Mhm.
I talk about things other than syndication though, because in forming this show, coming up with the idea, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody out there, I didn't want to have another, this is a real estate syndication show. I didn't want
Shots
to be the
fired.
next. Right, exactly. I'm not saying anybody's name, right? But this is not another, here's why passive syndication investing is a good idea. Granted, we do talk about that, right? Because I do
Mhm.
think it is a good idea. That's my strategy.
Mhm.
But we also talk about notes, turnkeys, triple net, private lending, because those are all great too, right? It's up to the listener to learn and decide what's right for them. And, just kind of having that open-mindedness and being able to learn more about other investment strategies that I don't pursue, but, others are interested in, I think has helped me relate to more people, to provide more
Mhm.
people value. Like, I'll give you an example tonight, actually, at the day we record this. The meetup that I host in Richmond is now online, but we have 2 gentlemen speaking for us who have a $50 million note fund. They're entrepreneurs. They've been successful business people, and they shifted it into note funds, many years ago. And tonight they're going to give us the inside scoop, right? I'm not going to ever run a note fund. I'll probably never buy a note. It's not what I'm interested in doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not my thing. So, I can learn something. I can help others learn something. If syndication's not right for you, great. I'm going to do my best to help you find what your thing is. And I think we'll all be better off for it. Right.
Yeah, I think
Hopefully.
the thing I'm hearing is it's really about serving your audience, even if it doesn't serve you, right? So even though you're not interested in notes, you kind of see it as an obligation or an opportunity to educate your audience about these opportunities so they can make the best, decisions for themselves. And that's really what anyone who's building a platform, it truly is about, right? It's about educating people, not necessarily just selling your own products or your own services. With that said, I want to know, like, what's the one strategy or the one insight you've been able to uncover on your own podcast that makes you say, man, that's brilliant. I should either incorporate that or I want to make sure I tell more people about this strategy or this tactic.
That is an interesting question. One that I think is not discussed enough. And I'm still trying to flesh this out for myself and to really clarify is triple net commercial real estate investments. They're kind of tough to get into, right? It's a fairly opaque market, not a huge amount of volume, but there is so much opportunity in triple net commercial that I want to keep learning more about it. I want to help others learn more about it. Right. I mean, right now I own multifamily and self storage, and that's what I plan to focus on moving forward. But, outside of the things that I do, I think triple net commercial is a huge opportunity for busy professionals out there that, we just need to figure out the best way for folks to get involved and how they can do it. But like I said, huge amount of opportunity. It's just tough to find the best way to get it done. And I'm trying to learn more about that myself.
Yeah, definitely an interesting space with the triple net, and a lot of longer term investors, the seasoned investors, a lot of them move into the triple net space because, like you mentioned, or I mentioned in your bio, you don't have to deal with the tenants, toilets, or termites. So it's kind of a great investing strategy if you want to be active or even passive, but not necessarily have to do a lot of work. Speaking of that, as we talk about the right strategies for these busy professionals, why not just go out and buy a duplex or a rental property or flip a property? What's the reason that regular busy professionals should not, or what's the reason they should consider other strategies than the ones that you typically hear about when it comes to real estate investing?
Well, I'm never going to say somebody should not flip a property. I'm never going to say you should not buy a duplex and rent it out. I mean, that'd be ridiculous. So many, and I don't mean to put that on you, right? But
It's
we
all right.
know
You just tell me
people.
it's a terrible question. I got it.
No. I want to.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because I want to be clear in that if I said don't go flip a property, that's kind of saying you can't make money flipping properties. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, there's a property across the street from from my home now being flipped that it's beautifying the neighborhood, and I'm sure that the guys flipping it are going to make a mint. And if you're in real estate long enough, you're going to meet a lot of people who are making solid money flipping real estate. The reality is that it's not a passive strategy. That is an active business. And it's like going out and buying a single family or duplex and renting it out, particularly if you're self-managing. That's not passive either, right? That's something you got to go do, right? If you get a property manager and have them handle it, okay, that's a little different, right? Because you're getting more out of the day to day, and you can work on continuing to grow your portfolio and scale up. The reason I don't personally like to talk about flipping is because that's an active business. That it's taxed as an active business. It's not a passive strategy. It's really more of an operating sales business. You can get checks, right? Grow your income, but in order to build wealth with flipping, okay, you need to take those checks and reinvest them in something that hopefully cash flows or is going to grow that wealth over time. And there are folks out there who have built, quote unquote passive flipping businesses, but that's still a business that they operate, and they've gotten to the point where they have systems that have automated, and they're spending less time in the day to day, but that's still a side business or a full business that they built. That's why I don't talk about it, because I don't see it as a passive wealth generation strategy. It's really more of an operating business than, say, investing in a syndication or buying a note or buying a couple notes or lending money to flippers. I think lending money is a great idea. So,
Yeah, I think too, like part of it is most people who are busy, right? If you're a busy professional, you have a demanding job. Maybe you have a family life or you have other obligations or quite frankly, other passions. And very few people say, you know what I really want? I want a second job. On top of being a
right.
busy professional with all of my other obligations and lifestyle desires, let me go sign up for a second job. And if you ask people, real estate investors in particular, if you ask them, hey, do you want a second job? Most of them are like, hell no. But that's what they end up getting when they decide to be a flipper or they decide to get into rentals because while yes, it's an investment, if it's active, you're now dedicating your time, your hours, your resources to go work. And I'll tell you, the day it dawned and became clear to me was a Saturday afternoon. And we had a unit turn in my 3-unit building. And I was going to hire some painters, but they were quoting me like something like 800 or $900 to paint this unit. And I was like, are you crazy? Like the unit rents for $1,400. I'm not going to give you basically a month's worth of rent to paint. I said, I'm gonna paint myself. So I go over there Saturday morning, I prep the walls, and I will tell you, painting a 1,300 square foot apartment didn't seem daunting in my head until until I started the process, between, prepping the walls, painting and all of that stuff. I mean, I looked up and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I still had 2 more rooms to go. And I
Oh
was like,
man.
you got to be kidding me here. And what happened was I had my son at the time was maybe like 4 or 5 months old, and my wife was at the park with him, sending me pictures, and I'm like, well, here I am on a Saturday afternoon. I'm at this property painting. My wife is at the park with my son, and the whole reason I got into real estate in my head was to create passive income so I could have more time with my family and time doing the things I love. My family's at the park. I'm here painting. What are my real priorities? And I realized that what I was doing wasn't really passive if it required me to be there. So that is also the last time I painted an apartment by myself, by the way. But I think the message here is that if you are a busy professional, prioritize the things that you say are your priorities. And I know a lot of people want to be active and they want to be general partners in deals, but the reality is that if I could go back, I probably would have just been a limited partner. If I would have known this existed, this opportunity existed. But no one, I didn't know anybody who was doing this, when I started. I thought if you wanted to invest in real estate, you had to go either become a wholesaler, become a flipper, or buy rentals. And I didn't know people who were just passively investing in deals. So if I could go back, I mean, yes, it's been a great journey, but the easier path certainly would have been to simply invest passively in a deal and enjoy the time that I did have and maybe use that for the other things that I was passionate about. So I think to your point with, looking at the wealth strategies for these passive investors or for these busy professionals is really just understanding that you don't necessarily have to take on a second job. You can find ways to make money, put your money to work, and still enjoy the things that you love. Because if you're already busting your tail at your day job and doing the other things, you really don't need to take on a second job. So that was my big takeaway from it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great great example, and something just popped into my head of, you mentioned painting an apartment. When I was a kid, I cannot remember how old I was, maybe 14 or 15, I don't know. I worked in a fireworks warehouse. So child labor, paid in cash under the table, very, very, very legit in a fireworks warehouse,
Something
nonetheless.
sounds real suspect about a kid working in
Oh
a
yeah.
fireworks warehouse. But
Well, one of my friends knew a guy, and hey, we can get paid in cash, this great money, and we couldn't work anywhere legally at the time, and we wanted money, so we're in, we go do it. And just one of the guys, one of the men who worked there, my friend's uncle or something, I can't remember who he was, needed somebody to help him go paint one of his rental properties one weekend, and I was the only one that was available, so I went with him and painted. And I remember doing that. He paid me great money, especially as a 14-year-old who had no other options to get money. I could have mowed lawns or something, but I hate mowing lawns. And I think back about that, and I don't know. I haven't talked to him since then, right? And I'm in my 30s now, so it's been a very long time. Um, but I can't imagine he wouldn't rather have been with his family than hanging out with me, painting an apartment in I think it was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I barely even remember anymore. But I still think it was good to have that experience and see how much work that was. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely, man. And that's the thing too, is like I think it comes down to your goals, right? And a lot of times our goals start to take over our why, and ultimately you're just going down a pathway. You just forget why you even started. And it's great to have those reminders to say, hey, the goal wasn't to invest in real estate. The goal was to create financial freedom or time flexibility, or more time doing the things I enjoy. It wasn't necessary to own a piece of property. So why don't we step back, and maybe there's some other ways to accomplish the real goal, so I'm not over here painting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a day where I should be outside enjoying my life. But with that said, I want to just make sure our listeners know where they can check out the podcast, learn more about the various passive wealth strategies. I know you got some syndication in there, but you have some other strategies as well. So where can folks listen to and find the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. The website is passivewealthstrategy.com. You can get the top 5 passive wealth assets in there. I talk about, it's fairly short, but I talk about the top 5, in my opinion, right? And they're all real estate related, how to get started. And spoiler alert, one of them is syndication, obviously, since, we talked about that already. Look up the Passive Wealth Strategy Show on your favorite podcast app, wherever you're hearing this show. We'll be there too. It's on YouTube as well. We're still I'm still working with my assistants and everything to figure out the best way to do that. But, or you can reach out to me directly, Taylor at passivewealthstrategy.com.
Taylor, we're going to our bullseye round. You ready?
I'm ready.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
I spun my wheels for a couple of years. I think my biggest failure is not implementing stuff faster. And that comes from insights that I gained, working with Trevor, from folks that I observed who frankly implemented faster than I did and started their trajectory upward faster than I did. And I think once I started to recognize that, I began to implement faster and then saw my trajectory, increase. And you can't get those years back, right? That was years ago. And I look at real estate prices now compared to real estate prices then. And I don't know if I would say I regret it, right? Because, I'm happy, I'm healthy. Everybody around me is happy and healthy. What more could I possibly ask for? But I can take that lesson and see, okay, this new concept in the business that I want to implement, I better get working on that, because if I truly learned this lesson from my past self and my past experiences, then I need to keep that in mind and just relentlessly, make things happen and get them implemented.
What's a mobile or digital resource you recommend for your business?
So a few years ago, this is somewhat business related, but a few years ago, I got very much into mindfulness meditation through Headspace. And I used that for a long time. They changed up a few things about their interface that I didn't like, so I found a new one. Now I'm doing 10% happier, which I really like. I find that is very helpful. It's not directly in the business, but it's nice to, mindfulness is and meditation's very trendy these days. I think the trend has subsided a little bit, but it's certainly helpful to, get out of your head a little bit, realize, quiet the things down and learn those skills. And that's definitely helped. That's been very big for me. I also am very big on the G Suite, the Google Suite of everything that they have. All of my stuff is on Drive. That's where my assistants get it. It's awesome.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Sure. So a little bit of insider information. So I offer my listeners a free copy of Think and Grow Rich in exchange for a review on Apple Podcasts. That's kind of buried in some of my marketing materials, but that offer's out there. You just got to take a screenshot of it and mail it to me. But I've sent that to many people in the last year, and I stand behind that book, of course. Well, I don't stand behind it, but I stand behind those ideas, and they've helped me a lot. I know that they've helped a lot of other people. So that's number one for sure.
I love it. All right. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I wish it could be daily though. It's as daily as I can.
The way you said it sounds like a joke almost, but I know you're dead ass serious. So please give 100%. Me a little bit more context.
Sure. I'm a blue belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started first in 2011. My ego got too bruised. I wasn't ready to get beaten up. I weigh around 200 pounds. I wasn't ready to get beaten up by guys that weigh 120 pounds. And then I put it off to the side, moved from Pennsylvania to Virginia in 2014, picked jiu-jitsu back up in 2015. And that makes such a huge difference in my confidence, my ability to deal with other people, my ability to stay focused. Because if you can stay calm when somebody bigger, stronger, and more skilled than you is trying to choke the life out of you, then you can stay calm when you're talking to someone on the phone through, in a sales context, through a cold call, or, if I'm talking to an investor on the phone, potential investor, on the phone or Zoom, then, what's the big deal? I can't tap out from this conversation, but he's also not trying to kill me. So I can, keep my mind calm, breathe, slow down when, somebody who's more skilled than me in jiu-jitsu is going to rip my arm off, then I can calm down and stay focused and stay present during, a completely unrelated situation. And I've had folks that, people get up in your face and they get a little irate. You're like, all right, well, I have a lot of practice in this. I can handle myself if the guy takes a swing at me. So I don't need to respond to his aggression. And that doesn't happen, that often in life, but having that background, being able to stay calm keeps things from, escalating when things get tough. So, I mean, it's all around. I think everybody who should at least try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I used to lift weights all the time. I haven't lifted weights in years now because that's the only thing I want to do. That's been, it would be daily, right? But I have only so many limited hours. If I could, I would only do jiu-jitsu and nothing else. So I have to dial it back. So I'm, spending all the time that I need to on the real estate business and podcast and everything.
I'm 99.9% sure that you are the first person to say a daily habit is getting choked out. So if that's what you love to do to get the blood going every day, I love it. But
I'm telling you, man, you got to try it.
I love it. Well, I'm a former wrestler and Taekwondo person as well, so I love the physical combat. So I mean, may hit you up offline and get some more tips there. Let's keep going with the show though. All right, what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious. Oh man, I'm curious about so many things. That is such an interesting question. I'm curious about the future. I'm curious about how is the U.S. federal government going to deal with the enormous, unprecedented amount of debt that it has? How are we as a society going to deal with climate change, especially as it pertains to real estate investing? And Neil Bawa talked about that at the Best Ever conference. I hit him up. He's going to be on my show to talk about that. And he's got some webinars coming up. And, it's a huge, enormous topic. It's going to impact all of us. How can I prepare? How can I, help my colleagues, investors, friends prepare for just the changes that we're going to see? It's coming. It's headed our way. I'm curious about how is cryptocurrency going to actually play and interplay with all of these things, because it's here to stay. Whether or not it's currency or complete speculation, it's not going away. So how's that going to impact the future? All these things. It's so much fun to talk to great people, like Neil, for example. He's the one who, I don't know anybody who's done more research on that topic in particular. He's the mad scientist of multifamily. So I'm so interested to hear what he has to say about that. And just I'm talking to a marketing consultant right now about refining my brand and my message and really continuing to nail it down. So I'm curious about what he has to say. So many fun things, man. This stuff is so much fun.
A lot of curiosities there, but I love it. And you're right, Neil's great with that content. So we'll make sure we link to some of our stuff with Neil Bawa as well. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Oh boy. Like I said before, how important implementation is, and really, really the daily actions that add up over time, tracking those, planning them, 1, tracking them, 2, and then watching what others are doing, the metagame, learning what they do. Sign up on another syndicator's email list and just watch what their drip campaign looks like and see what they're doing. Hey, I like that. I don't like that. Maybe I can implement some of these things. You're never going to plagiarize. You're just going to be inspired by the message that they have to say, of course, right? But you can learn all of those things. And, I'll tell you, somebody who really influenced me more than anybody else, and I'll say his name because I have nothing but praise to say about the guy, is Whitney Sewell. He lives in Virginia too. He's in the same, Joe Fairless program that you and I are in. And, right when he started, he's in Roanoke. He, put out a message, hey, on our thing, anybody in Virginia want to talk? Hey, I'm great. I'd love to talk with you. He's coming to Richmond. He and I sat down and talked, and I got to know him a bit and everything about his goals and what he had done before and strategies that he had in place. And that was before he had syndicated a single deal. He and I, split tickets to a couple conferences, Ultimate Partnering, Michael Blanc's conference in the DC area. And man, just watching him implement and take action, not just take action, but commit so hard, and how much of his money and an enormous investment at the beginning in his business, he went hard, and it's obviously paying off for him very well. How great he is at connecting with others and how that has enabled him to raise capital, and just how great of a guy he is too. I'm a big fan of him, right? He's setting paid coaches aside, he's had the biggest impact on me. Maybe probably not even intentionally, right? Just from me watching him and learning about him, and he's very generous with his knowledge when you talk to him. So yeah, been very helpful. I'm very grateful for everything he's taught me, maybe not even intending to have taught me it. Just leading by example has been awesome.
I think it's great, man. And Whitney's a friend of the program, and I've been fortunate enough to be on his show and have him on this show. And I think we're overdue to get Whitney back on this program, but great guy, and definitely love the success he has. Whitney is the host of the syndication apartment. Is it Apartment Syndication
Show podcast?
Syndication Show podcast. But it's a great podcast. If you're going to learn more about the syndication process, so definitely make sure we link to that as well. All right, we got two more questions for you, and then we're going to wrap up here. But you are in Richmond. We just talked about that. Give me the best place to grab a bite in Richmond.
Best restaurant or best part of town?
I want the best restaurant. You got to give me a place to actually go to.
Okay. I'll preface this by saying I'm a vegetarian, been a vegetarian for 5 years, so it's not going to be barbecue or anything like that. My favorite restaurant is this little pho place called Photaydo, Photaydo. It's a house that was converted into a restaurant, probably 1,000 square foot house, cash only. And it's the best pho I have ever had. It's amazing. It's out in the West End. So
awesome. Great. My wife's vegetarian too. So if we ever get out to that area, I'm sure she'll want to check it out. So we'll definitely do that. Listen, Taylor, it's been a lot of fun talking to you. Great listening to kind of your background, kind of what really got you down this pathway to learning more about passive wealth strategies, the podcast, the newsletter, and all the content that you're creating right now to help other people along their journey, especially those busy professionals, to learn more. And the bulls around you gave some great tips and great insights. I love the fact that you're willing to recognize other folks like Neil Bawa, Whitney Sewell, and other folks who have kind of influenced you, but also that you continue to influence other people as far as helping them learn about these different strategies and tools. For folks who want to get in touch with you, learn more about what you've got going on, or even just check out some of the content you have available, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. Go to passivewealthstrategy.com. You can, like I said, get the top 5 passive wealth assets. We didn't dig into all of them today. That, in my opinion, are the best way to get passively involved in real estate investing. You can contact me, Taylor, at passivewealthstrategy.com if you just like to connect and talk about real estate investing. And look forward to hearing to anyone who wants to have a conversation.
Taylor, thank you for coming on Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. We will stay in touch, obviously, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, John.